What's up, everybody? Circus here coming at you with another how to beat the meta video. I got Herf in here because he says he's an expert. And
I've never claimed that.
this might be a Herf versus Circus video where we determine whether or not he's an expert.
I've never wanted to be an expert.
Then stop saying that you are. So
I've
this,
never said that.
don't interrupt the host. This video is going to be about Shiranui, and we're going to be talking about control and combo and hybrid combo control. No, that's not one, but there's control Shiranui and combo Shiranui and how to play against them using various decks. So, but to start with, we're just going to be talking about just generically their strength and weaknesses and kind of how to exploit that. So, control Shiranui, I mean, it is what it is. Everybody knows it. It likes to stall with the back row and just try to get out its big synchro monsters, right?
Yeah, I would say that it's worth talking about their strengths individually, but their weaknesses are basically the same.
Okay.
The biggest weakness of Shiranui in general is that it is graveyard reliant, as well as it's just a synchro deck in Duel Links. Synchro decks and Duel Links will always, we'll always have a harder time in Duel Links because we have 3 monster zones and we have Floodgate in the game. So synchro decks are always going to have the same weakness, just like at Infernities, right? So the weakness is if you can stop them from starting their climb, audience, stuff like that, basically stuff that puts them face down but not into the graveyard. Because they really, really want to be in the graveyard. And that's essentially leads us up to the next point of if you deny them from being in the graveyard, they have a very hard time getting going. So if you use cards like Karma Cut, Necro Valley, all of these things, they can play around, but it requires a non-linear line of play that is either harder to do or is just not as good as the normal version.
All right, so let's say you get into a match and your opponent comes out, sets 1 monster, sets 3 back row, and passes. You have a pretty good idea it's Shiranui. What's your turn 1 in general? We're not picking a specific deck here, but just going into it, you do not want to hit that monster, right? But you also have to worry that they're going to hit it with one of their back row.
Yeah, so a lot of them just do play Ballista in general. So it can be kind of like, do I want to force out the Ballista or not? Because it's going to come either way, right? So I would say more often than not, I'm more willing to swing in than maybe a lot of people would be. Because I guess, like the only thing they're setting is, a tuner. And you should be more willing to swing if you think you're playing against combo Shiranui, because they only play 1 level 2 in the deck. Okay. So it's more likely to be a level 3 than it is a level 2. You know what I mean?
Right.
So against combo Shiranui, just swing. It doesn't matter. I guess it matters, but most of the time you're going to be okay, and it's not going to make as much of a difference. However, if you're playing against control Shiranui, you should really think about, do I have the ability to deal with the follow-up? Because if you don't, you probably should just, do your combo, set 3, and pass and see what transpires.
So it's kind of like when we were talking the Kara Curry video, your deck needs to be able to deal with that back row too in some way, right? Because if they set a monster, set 3 back row, they're more than likely going to use it on your turn.
Yeah, the funniest thing about this meta is that it's a going first back row meta that requires you to play like you're always going second. You know what I mean by that?
Explain. So, like, you just blew my mind. You just went galaxy brain on me.
The meta right now is going first to 3 back row.
Yes.
So you're not going to always win the coin flip. So you have to always play, or not always play, but you always have to have the game plan of what if I don't go first?
What if I go second? How am I going to get through this? Am I going to be able to even set a board?
Yeah, you need to think about, you need to build your deck optimally for both situations at the same time.
Which, how do we do that? I mean, just back row hate. Every deck should have some way to deal with back row.
Yeah, so I think Lance in a lot of situations is a really good solution to that.
So explain that, because they'll, let's say, use a Ballista Squad, they're going to tribute off a monster, and then what does Lance do at that point?
Well, Lance can protect your own monster from getting destroyed.
Okay.
Right? So Lance is really good because it is both going second back row height and going first back row. So
it's a
what I mean
quick
by
play,
that,
right? Which means
yeah,
you
it's
can
a
play it at
quick
any
play that can
time.
reduce down to 800, reduce 800 attack from your opponent, and it has the added benefit of being able to be used in the damage step. So
Okay.
your opponent a lot of times won't be able to react to your lance, so a lot of times they're just going to lose their monster.
So what happens? They attack in, and you play that where in the damage step?
In the damage step, they can't react to it
And
unless they have something else in the damage step. Because the way the steps work is really complicated, and Duel Links does a really poor job of teaching players this. But only card effects that increase or decrease attack can be activated in the damage step, and that's partially because of damage calculation.
Is that also defense though too? Cards that affect defense?
Yeah, so increase or decrease attack or stats, I should say.
Stats. Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
So at that point, you can't play Canada in the damage step.
Correct. It's like when people used to play Spike Shield with Chain in the damage step when they would swing in with a Cypher Soldier, Cancer deck, whatever. So the damage step is a really vital way, and being able, if you can interact in it and your opponent can't, a lot of times you just win the duel.
Okay.
Or
so,
it gives you a leg up in that duel.
Okay, so they attack in with their Shiranui monster, and you can just like hit it with that lance. It'll lose 800 attack. They swing into it, and bam, it's dead.
Yeah, so a lot of people, I can see, especially newer players, would think, well, if they swing in with level 10 and I activate my lance, it won't be able to, to like protect itself, right? And that's no, because the level 10 doesn't activate, so you should be aware of that. Level 10 is just a response. It doesn't. It's just really weird because problem solving card text sucks. But it doesn't technically activate. It's just like a continuous effect that happens when it would be destroyed.
You can do this.
Yeah, so it's just like something that, it could happen. It's not something that you activate.
All right, so getting back to breaking the board, I think that's where we're at.
Yeah.
So Lance is a good way to do it. Cosmic, is there anything else?
I would say that Karma Cut is really, really good versus Shiranui because it forces them to be able to banish their Solitaire, which a lot of times that they can't do unless they can put it in the graveyard and have a way to banish it from their graveyard, which Control Shiranui especially just generally can't do, except with Gazuki. So Gazuki is the other really interesting card that you should think about when you're playing against Shiranui, because the dump effect is an ignition. So when it's on the field, they need to press on it. So you can floodgate it, and they won't get an effect.
So like if it comes out, it doesn't happen right away. They have to
so
activate the effect.
Yeah, so it's the difference between like a trigger and an ignition. So Samurai Skull, which is the other one that people use to dump, especially free-to-play Shiranui players, but they'll normal summon their Samurai Skull, and the normal summon actually triggers its effect. So even if you flip it down, it will still get its effect.
Now Gazuki doesn't do that though.
Yeah, Gazuki needs to be normal summoned, and while it's face up on the field, you need to be able to click on it and press activate. So there's going to be a window of opportunity to disrupt that Gazuki before they can activate it, because they need to be able to press on it.
Okay. So that'd be a good time to disrupt them if
so
you got to go first.
Yeah, so if you get to go first, you can just flip down that Gazuki, stuff like that, and you're chilling most of the time.
So Shiranui likes to put things in the graveyard, right? So I would assume you should be checking their graveyard like a lot, knowing what's in there.
Yeah, the biggest question you need to ask yourself, is there level 2 in the graveyard?
Right.
If so, how screwed am I? Because if you don't have a response to that level 2 in the graveyard, they have a variety of synchro plays that can actually really just like stop your way of interacting with them. Because if they go into Hades, your monsters won't be able to float. So if you're playing like Cristrons, something like that, and the worst part about this stupid deck is that whenever they go into something like an Archfiend or a Hades, it's applicable to all of the zombies on the field, which is the most annoying part. So as soon as they go into that Archfiend and it hits the field, all of the zombies are protected from destruction. So you really should be playing things that don't destroy, things that either flip down or banish. So like Karma Cut and Floodgate are amazing in this meta right now versus
Okay.
Shiranui.
Now, you
Because
said something about the Hades. What does that do?
Hades, any monster it destroys by battle, its effects are negated.
And that
So,
lasts as long as it's in play
yep,
or in the graveyard, right? So if
yep.
like they hit a Sulfefinir, it goes to the grave. You can't activate that next turn. Well, you can activate it. It just gets negated still in the grave the next turn.
Yeah, unless you special summon it off impact and put it back in the graveyard again, its effects are negated. So it has to change positions
Right.
in
But as
order
long as
to.
it's in the graveyard, it's not
Mhm.
it's not going to be able to do anything. Okay.
Yep.
All right. So the with the level 2 in the grave, what do you do? I mean, do you just hope and pray at that point, or is there a way to get that thing out of the grave? I mean, how do you deal with it?
Well, yeah, well, a lot of decks will play either DD Crow to preemptively banish it. A lot of decks, or decks that can, have been playing Necro Valley
Mm-hmm.
to help lock it into the graveyard, as well as people have been citing cards like Transmigration Prophecy. And Transmigration Prophecy is really good because it actually targets 2 monsters in either player's graveyard. So you can send their monster back to the deck, or so their level 2 back to the deck, as well as, let's say, I'm a Karakuri player, and I really want my Merchant back, or I want my Barreto back. I could put that back in my deck and then be able to combo off after.
Now, Karma Cut has an interesting effect, right? Let's say they got like a level 2 in the graveyard and they summon a level 2 or flip one up.
Mm-hmm. Karma Cut will banish the face-up one on the field and the one from the grave.
And then once they're banished, for the most part, do they have a way to get that back, or?
Well, and that's the interesting juxtaposition between Combo Shiranui and Control Shiranui, is that Combo Shiranui, they have cards like Catan and Gazuki, so they can reasonably expect to be able to get those level 2s back, because Gazuki can pitch a Solitaire, and then they can Catan activate, banish the Solitaire, bring the level 2 back, and they can essentially recycle their resources. However, the Control Shiranui really only have one line of play to get that level 2. All of their level 2 backs is have a Solitaire in the grave and something happens to the Gazuki. So it requires you playing into that line of play. And so if you're smart and you can think ahead of the Shiranui player, you can avoid that.
Okay, so you really need to assess quickly what style you're playing against.
Yeah, so pretty much if they're playing 20 cards and you see a lot of back row all the time, you should always assume that it's control, and that they're not going to be playing Catan or Ghostman's Girl Shiranui, although some have. Okay,
That's the hybrid. That's where we get the
hybrid, and that's why it's so stupid, because we're essentially saying the same thing for both decks. However, they have slight strengths and weaknesses. And I mean, that's a different discussion, but really you just have to target that graveyard with all you got, man. You just got to look at it and say, how do I limit their access to this? And that's going to be how you win the duel.
All right, and some of the things, just to review, you said Necro Valley is really good, a DD Crow, Transmigration Prophecy. Anything else? I mean, what about like stuff out in the field? I mean, let's say they get some stuff out. Or we talked about Needle Sealing before. Is that good, or is that Sun Saga just going to say nope? Or
Needle Sealing is an interesting example because both the Archfiend and the Sun Saga will protect from it. So I would steer clear of things like Needle Sealing, just strictly because there's a reason that Shiranui play Needle Sealing, and that's because they don't mind it.
Because they can't be destroyed, but you could banish, right?
True, yeah. You can use stuff like Karma Cut to banish their synchros. Now you typically don't want to banish their regular monsters that aren't tuners because they all have effects when banished. So if you banish that square with Karma Cut, they get a draw and discard. So that's not great use of that. So you'd rather use it on the level 2 or whatever synchro that they bring out.
Okay.
But in general, all of Shiranui synchros have 0 defense. So one really interesting interaction that Cyber Dragons, which generally have the worst Shiranui matchup across the board typically, is that they're actually able to summon Cyber End Dragon and attack for exact lethal on a defense Shiranui. So if you have cards like Floodgate and stuff like that where you can flip something down, and you can use stuff like Purgatrio, Cyber End Dragon, any kind of piercing is super, super effective versus Shiranui.
How about a Windstorm of Ataqua?
Yeah, that could work as well. So you could win. You could, I mean, feasibly, you could Windstorm into Purgatrio for game. I'm just saying. Just putting it out there.
All right, so
That's possible.
when we were talking about Karakuri, we were talking about bottlenecks.
Mm-hmm.
What are our bottlenecks here? Let's say you don't take out that tuner, they knock it out, they throw it in the grave on your turn. Now what?
It really
are
depends
you waiting for the
upon,
synchros to come out at this point?
Yeah, it really depends upon what they synchro with, right? So if there's a solitaire plus a level 2 in the grave, that's in general a pretty bad situation for you. So you have to be ready for that level 8. But you always want to be reluctant to put more things in their graveyard for them if you don't have lethal.
Okay.
Right? Because one of the best things you can do for the Shiranui player is if they go Squire summon the level 6, is to then attack over the level 6 and put it in the graveyard. Because then they have an instant level 8. Right? When before, they would have to summon another level 6 with the tuner that they have in the graveyard. That's probably not going to do as much as the level 8, because the level 8 oftentimes puts lethal on board just by itself.
So there isn't really a lot to maybe stop them in the main phase.
Yeah, so I mean, your general disruptions like your Floodgates, Canadias, Karma Cuts, I mean, those are going to be good across the board for any deck in pretty much any matchup, but there's not really a great way to use them besides hitting, like banishing tuners, basically, is what you want to be thinking of.
Okay. All right, with that in mind, why don't we do some of the matchups here quick that are currently in the meta. I'm going to just kind of go down the list here, but Kristrons. That's a big matchup right now.
Shiranui across the board typically are considered to have one of the best Crystron matchups in the game.
And why is
and that is because they have access to a lot of back row typically all the time, which Kristrons don't like to play against, as well as the fact that the level 10 can protect from cards like SSA.
All right, but so, as the Crystron player, what am I looking to do?
Well, we have to address the problems before we can address the solutions. You know what I mean?
He's the expert. See? Expert. Expert.
So you're going to want to rely on a lot of back row hate. You know, you want to be playing 3 Cosmics and 3 Lances at pretty much all times with any Crystron build. Mm-hmm. Okay? So that's just, you got to build like you're going second all the time. Second of all, you really want to utilize the power of Brionac. Brionac is your best friend in this matchup because it doesn't destroy anything. It will send all of their resources back to their extra deck, and they won't be able to ladder through their synchros quite as easily.
Okay.
So that's really, really strong. And you also want to think about how do I deal with this follow-up? Because like I said, if they have a solitaire and a level 2 in the grave, how do I prevent from dying to a level 8 on the field? So is that sitting maybe on a Citree into Amatrix play a little longer? Is that, you know, you want to think through as the Crystron player, do I need to be defensive next turn, or can I lethal them this turn, which are essentially the two
Try not
main
to be
ways.
too aggressive then.
You never want to be too greedy as the Crystron player in this matchup because they will punish you very easily.
All right, so the other big matchup, of course, is Karakuri. They're on the screen right now. They're playing against ninjas, though, so that's not really relevant. But Karakuri versus Shiranui. As the Karakuri player, what are you doing?
You really want to protect your coveted normal summon, right? So you need, like I said, you need to be playing going second cards. You need to be playing triple Cosmic. You need to be playing as many lands as you can. You probably should be playing one main deck Necro Valley just to face Kristrons and Shiranui, which are probably your 2 toughest matchups. So I mean, you just really need to build your deck for this. And one really good way to eat through the opponent's resources is with Karma Cut and the Shed, both of which are really, really good for you because the Shed is going to force through multiple back row of theirs, as well as the Karma Cut. Like I said before, you can banish those levels 2s, and you can really get through. Also, the Cash In is really great when they normal summon that Squire. Just negate that Squire. GG, easy game. So that couple of going first and going second strategies for Karakuri, although it's considered a pretty difficult matchup.
All right. New hotness. We brought this up before. Magician girls.
Yeah, Magician Girls are actually considered to have one of the easiest Shiranui matchups in the meta right now. And that's because, just in general, Invoker likes fire.
Okay? Yeah, and it's always in the grave.
Yeah, and Shiranui are always, they're all fire monsters, so you're always going to have them in the grave. You have an instant Purgatrio at any time. So one of the best things you can do is, you let them synchro, you floodgate that